Carmina Burana is a scenic cantata composed by Carl Orff in 1935 and 1936, based on 24 poems from the medieval collection Carmina Burana. Its full Latin title is Carmina Burana, Cantiones profanæ cantoribus a choris cantandæ comitantibus instrumentis atque imaginibus magicis. Carmina Burana is part of Trionfi, a musical triptych that also includes Catulli Carmina and Trionfo di Afrodite. The first and last movements of the piece are called Fortuna Imperatrix Mundi, and start with the very well-known O Fortuna. Text. In 1934, Orff encountered the text in the 1847 edition of the Carmina Burana by Johann Andreas Schmeller, the original text dating mostly from the 11th or 12th century, including some from the 13th century. Michel Hofmanner, then a young law student and Latin and Greek enthusiast, assisted Orff in the selection and organization of 24 of these poems into a libretto, mostly in Latin verse, with a small amount of Middle High German and Old Provençal sectional. The selection covers a wide range of topics, as familiar in the 13th century as they are in the 21st century, the fickleness of fortune and wealth, the ephemeral nature of life, the joy of the return of spring, and the pleasures and perils of drinking, gluttony, gambling and lust. Reception. Carmina Burana was first staged in Frankfurt by the Frankfurt Opera on June 8, 1937 under conductor Bertil Wetzelsberger with the Currency Silencio Frankfurter, staging by Oskar Currency Italiener, D, and sets and costumes by Ludwig Sievert. Shortly after the greatly successful premiere, Orff said the following to his publisher: "Short music, everything I have written to date, and which you have, unfortunately, printed, can be destroyed. With Carmina Burana, my collected works begin." Several performances were repeated elsewhere in Germany. The Nazi regime was at first nervous about the erotic tone of some of the poems, but eventually embraced the piece. It became the most famous piece of music composed in Germany at the time. The popularity of the work continued to rise after the war, and by the 1960s Carmina Burana was well established as part of the international classic repertoire. Alex Ross wrote that the music itself commits no sins simply by being and remaining popular. That Carmina Burana has appeared in hundreds of films and television commercials is proof that it contains no diabolical message, indeed that it contains no message whatsoever. The desire Orff expressed to his publisher has by and large been fulfilled. No other composition of his approaches its renown, as evidenced in both pop culture's appropriation of O Fortuna, and the classical world's persistent programming and recording of the work. In the United States, Carmina Burana represents one of the few box office certainties in 20th century repertoire. Structure. Carmina Burana is structured into 5 major sections, containing 25 movements total. Orff indicates atque markings between all the movements within each scene. Much of the compositional structure is based on the idea of the turning Fortuna wheel. The drawing of the wheel found on the first page of the Burana Codex includes 4 phrases around the outside of the wheel: regnebo, regno, regnavi, some sign regno, within each scene, and sometimes within a single movement. The wheel of fortune turns, joy turning to bitterness, and hope turning to grief. O Fortuna, the first poem in the Schmeller edition, completes this circle, forming a compositional frame for the work through being both the opening and closing movements. Staging. Orff developed a dramatic concept he called Theatrum Mundi in which music, movement, and speech were inseparable. Babcock writes that Orff's artistic formula limited the music in that every musical moment was to be connected with an action on stage. It is here that modern performances of Carmina Burana fall short of Orff's intentions. Although Carmina Burana was intended as a staged work involving dance, choreography, visual design and other stage action, the piece is now usually performed in concert halls as a cantata. A notable exception is the Trans-Siberian Orchestra version, which features strobe lights and what appears to be flames engulfing the stage, wings and balconies, pulsing intensely in time to the music. A danced version choreographed by Lois Holton for the Minnesota Dance Theater in 1978 was prepared in collaboration with Orff himself. Musical style. Orff's style demonstrates a desire for directness of speech and of access. Carmina Burana contains little or no development in the classical sense, and polyphony is also conspicuously absent. Carmina Burana avoids overt harmonic complexities, a fact which many musicians and critics have pointed out, such as Ann Powers of the New York Times. Orff was influenced melodically by late Renaissance and early Baroque models including William Byrd and Claudio Monteverdi. It is a common misconception that Orff based the melodies of Carmina Burana on neumatic melodies. While many of the lyrics in the Burana Codex are enhanced with neumes, almost none of these melodies had been deciphered at the time of Orff's composition, and none of them had served Orff as a melodic model. His shimmering orchestration shows a deference to Stravinsky. In particular, Orff's music is very reminiscent of Stravinsky's earlier work, Lesniches. Rhythm, for Orff as it was for Stravinsky, is often the primary musical element. Overall, it sounds rhythmically straightforward and simple, but the meter will change freely from one measure to the next. While the rhythmic arc in a section is taken as a whole, a measure of 5 may be followed by one of 7, to one of 4, and so on, often with caesura marked between them. These constant rhythmic changes combined with the caesura create a very conversational feel so much so that the rhythmic complexities of the piece are often overlooked. Some of the solo arias pose bold challenges for singers. The only solo tenor aria, Olim lacus calorum, must be sung almost completely in falsetto to demonstrate the suffering of the character. The baritone arias often demand high notes not commonly found in baritone repertoire, and parts of the baritone aria Dies Nox e Omnia must be sung in falsetto, a unique example in baritone repertoire. Also noted is the solo soprano aria, Dulcissime, which demands extremely high notes. Orff intended this aria for a lyric soprano, not a coloratura, so that the musical tensions would be more obvious. Instrumentation, Carmina Burana is scored for a large orchestra of 3 flutes, 3 oboes, 3 clarinets in B-flat and A, 2 bassoons, 1 contrabassoon, 4 horns in F, 3 trumpets in B-flat and C, 3 trombones, 1 tuba. A percussion section with 5 timpani, 2 snare drums, bass drum, triangle, cymbals, suspended cymbal, antique cymbals, ratchet, castanets, tambourine, sleigh bells, tam-tam, tubular bells, 3 glockenspiels, gong, xylophone. 2 pianos, 1 celesta. Strings. 2 SATB mixed choirs and 1 boys choir. And soprano soloist, tenor soloist, baritone soloist, and short solos for 3 tenors, baritone and 2 basses. A reduced version for soloists, SATB mixed choir, children's choir, 2 pianos and 6 percussion was prepared by Orff's disciple Wilhelm Killmayr in 1956 and authorized by Orff himself, to allow smaller ensembles the opportunity to perform the piece. An arrangement for wind ensemble was prepared by Juan Vicente Mascals, who wanted to both give wind bands a chance to perform the work and to facilitate performances in cities that have a high-quality choral union and wind band but lack a symphony orchestra. A performance of this arrangement was recorded by the North Texas Wind Symphony under Eugene Corporon. In writing this transcription, Mascals maintained the original chorus, percussion, and piano parts. An additional arrangement for concert band was prepared by composer John Krantz and does not include chorus. Various arrangements of different movements for young bands also exist. Australian classical guitarist Gareth Koch arranged and recorded Carmina Burana for the guitar. It was originally released by the ABC Classics label in 1998 and re-released in 2005. Notable recordings: Eugen Joachim with the choir and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin and Gundula Janowitz, Gerard Stolze, and Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau. Recorded October 1967 in Berlin's UFA studio, released 1968. This version was endorsed by Carl Orff himself and was the first choice of the BBC Radio 3 CD review building a library review in 1995. 1. Herbert Kegel with the Rundfunk Leipzig Choir, the Rundfunk Sinfonie Orchestra Leipzig Orchestra and Jutta Vulpius, Hans Joachim Rotzsch, Kurt H. 1/4 Benthal and Kurt Riem. Recorded and released 1960. Orff himself loved this version. Kurtich horn with the Munich Radio Orchestra and Chor des Bayerischen Rundfunks, der Tar Paragraph LZE Knabencher. Lucia Pop, John van Kesteren, Hermann Prey. Film directed by Jean-Pierre Ponel for ZDF. Recorded July 1973, released 1974 on Eurodisc. CD reissues on BMG in 1984 and 1995. Both the film adaptation and recording were endorsed by Carl Orff himself, Riccardo Muti with Philharmonia Orchestra and Chorus and Eileen Auger, John van Kesteren and Jonathan Summers. Recorded 1979, featured in the top 3 of BBC Radio 3's review and is also recommended by Classics Today, 2, Leonard Slatkin with St. Louis Symphony Orchestra and Chorus, RCA 09026 61673-2, featured in the top 3 of BBC Radio 3's review, James Levine with Chicago Symphony Orchestra and Chorus and June Anderson, Philip Creech, and Ben Weikl. Recorded 1984. This version won the 1987 Grammy Award for Best Choral Performance. Christian Thielmann with the choir and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin and Knabencher Berlin. Released 2003 by Deutsche Grammophon GmbH, Hamburg. Named Editor's Choice by Gramophone. Charles Dutoit with the Orchestre Symphonique de Montreux. Copyright Alan St. Lawrence Choir, Stanford Olson, Mark Oswald. 1997, Decca 028945529028. High quality recording technically. Simon Rattle with the Berlin Philharmonic and Rundfunk Berliner, de. Sally Matthews, Lawrence Brownlee and Christian Gehaher. 2005 Emmy Classics. Very Fast, Percussive Emphasis. Seiji Azora with the Berlin Philharmonic and Shinukai Chorus. Kathleen Battle, Frank Lopardo and Thomas Allen. 1990 Philips DVD video. Michael Tilson Thomas with the Cleveland Orchestra, Chorus and Boys Choir. Judith Blegen, Kenneth Riegel and Peter Binder. Recorded 1974, released 1975 CBS Records. CD re-release 1990 MK 33172 CBS Records Masterworks. In 1988, Carmina Burana was recorded by the New York Choral Society accompanied by Jeffrey Reed Baker using synthesizers. See also, Carl Orff's O Fortuna in Popular Culture, Notes. Bibliography, Babcock, Jonathan. Carl Orff's Carmina Burana, A Fresh Approach to the Work's Performance Practice. Choral Journal 45, No. 11, 26 €40. Fasson, Alberto, Carl Orff, in The New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians, London, Macmillan 2001. Cater, Michael H. Carl Orff, Man of Legend. Composers of the Nazi Era, 8 Portraits. New York, Oxford University Press, 2000, 111 €143. ISBN 0-19-509924-9, Orff, Carl. Carl Orff Unseen Work, Documentation. Tusing, Schneider, 1975 1983. ISBN 3-7952-0154-3, Steinberg, Michael. Carl Orff, Carmina Burana. Choral Masterworks, A Listener's Guide. Oxford, Oxford University Press, 2005, 230 €242. Taruskin, Richard, The Oxford History of Western Music. Volume for the Early 20th Century. Oxford, Oxford University Press, 2005, 754 €765. External links, Ave Formosissima, O Fortuna on YouTube, Coro Sinfonico Sumunitario da Universidade de Brasilia, Carmina Burana web comprehensive site about Carl Orff's Carmina Burana, text, original and translated in English, as it appears in Orff's libretto, program notes on Carmina Burana, March 28, 2004, Mendelssohn Club of Philadelphia, The Lasting Appeal of Orff's Carmina Burana, sound files and transcription at NPR, Full lyrics to Carmina Burana, Carl Orff, Carmina Burana, University Chorus and Alumni Chorus, UC Davies Symphony Orchestra and the Pacific Boychar at the Mondavi Center.